All right, we're about to dive into something pretty fascinating. It's a 6th grade math lesson that mashes up two things you'd probably never expect to see in the same sentence: algebra and stories from the Bible. Yeah, it's a really unique way to teach.
So, you gotta ask, right? What in the world could algebra and the Bible possibly have in common? I mean, on one hand, you've got variables, equations, and pure logic. And on the other, you have these ancient texts full of faith, history, and morality. They seem like they're from completely different universes.
But believe it or not, this real-world lesson plan we're looking at gives a very direct and pretty surprising answer. It actually tries to build a bridge between these two worlds.
So how on earth do they pull this off? Well, to get it, you have to understand the core philosophy here. This isn't just about crunching numbers. The whole lesson is framed around the idea of strategy.
And here it is, the big idea, straight from the source material. The whole point is that the logical, step-by-step thinking you use to solve an equation, that's the exact same mental muscle you need when life throws a messy problem at you. It's all about making abstract math feel, well, useful.
Okay, so that's the theory, but what does this actually look like in a classroom? Well, this is where it gets interesting. The lesson turns stories from the Bible into honest-to-goodness algebra word problems.
Well, let's check out the first example they use. It pulls from the story of Daniel, and specifically a moment where he has to be really strategic about rationing his food.
And this just lays it out perfectly. You see, on the left, you've got the story, the setup. And then boom, on the right, that story gets translated into a multi-step algebraic equation. The story literally becomes the container for the math problem. From there, it's just straight up algebra. You know the drill. First, you distribute the 5 to get 10x plus 15. Then, you subtract 15 from both sides to start getting x by itself. And finally, you divide by 10 to solve for x.
And that gets us our answer. X equals 7. A nice, clean number. But hold on, because in this lesson, just getting the number 7 isn't the whole point.
And this is absolutely the key. The lesson doesn't just stop at x equals 7. It immediately brings that number back into the story's world. So, 7 isn't just a number anymore. It's Daniel's portion base. It closes the loop, reinforcing that connection between the math and the story.
And this isn't just a one-time thing either. It's a pattern that runs through the whole lesson. The story of Jonah inside the great fish, that becomes an equation. A teaching from Jesus about workers' wages, that also gets turned into an algebra problem. It's a whole system.
So, after all these math examples, the lesson brings it all home with what it calls the final equation. But this one's a little different. It's not about numbers. It's about the moral of the story.
To land the final point, the lesson uses this Bible verse from Genesis. It's talking about Joseph, who was put in a position of huge authority in Egypt because he was such a brilliant problem solver for the Pharaoh.
And there you have it. That's the ultimate takeaway they're building to. The lesson makes a direct link between the skill of solving math problems and the virtue of wise leadership. The idea is that when students learn to solve equations, they're actually practicing a kind of wisdom, a skill that's valuable and honored.
Which really leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? What we've looked at here is a case study in how a technical subject like algebra can be wrapped inside a very specific narrative. It makes you wonder, how much does the story we tell around any subject, whether it's math or history or science, fundamentally change the lesson we end up learning?